You are all set.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. September 20th, 2021. We will open Criminal Justice Committee meeting. We have a quorum present with Leggett, Shepler, Stroud, Driscoll. Absent is Diamond. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Make that moved by Driscoll, seconded by Stroud. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. We will do the district attorney's agenda first. We'll ask District Attorney Carasone to take the floor and present your budget.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I just wanted to take request 2 out of order. And the reason why is I'm afraid I'll forget at the end.
Okay.
This is a notice of intent to fill vacant position. Our legal clerk was able to get, sadly, a better opportunity in another DA's office, financial opportunity. And she was actually our lead discovery person. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but we are looking to fill that position.
So, more than that. So would you like to take this up first?
Yeah, so I was just hoping to address that first, because I know once I get into all the weeds of the budget, I could forget.
Sure.
And I didn't want
So this would be our page here.
notice of intent to
Legal
fill.
clerk 3, create 2, legal clerk 3 positions.
No, this is the very last 2 pages, and it just says notice of intent to fill vacant position, resolution request form number 12, and its title of position, legal clerk 5, department district attorney. And it should be the last 2 pages that you've got.
Yes. Everybody have that?
So that's an existing position. What happened is I ended up speaking to the DA that hired that person, and our discovery, well, everyone in our office is trained now in that prosecutor's case management system, PCMS. And after the hire, the DA said, that was a very attractive feature, that I have someone that can come in and do that. And I realize that's a limited resource. We've never had a person with those skills coming in the door. So we have to train on those.
Just going out the door.
She's going out, but she's staying within the system in prosecution, which I like.
All right. Motion to bring request number 2.
So moved.
Thank you, Supervisor Shepler, Supervisor Stroud on the second. Discussion. Think you'll have any problem filling this position? Is this a test?
It is, but right now the tests aren't. It's still provisional, so it kind of in a way makes it easier.
Okay.
Because we can just open it up, and then once the testing occurs, that's when it can get tricky.
Sure.
So as far
Any other questions, or shall we vote? Is there anything you'd like to add to this one here?
No.
Okay.
no, thank you.
Hearing no other, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries.
If I could, I just wanted to go through our budgets. And before I did do that, I did have some good news I've shared with the budget team, but I haven't been in front of committee. Earlier in the year, we became aware of a pretty substantial grant award that we were available for or eligible as a county. And it was related to the discovery demands that had been placed on us by the new criminal procedure laws, CPL 245. I'm pleased to report that the county got the full grant amount of $323,000, and that is designed to offset some of these expenses that go towards discovery, which obviously 100% impacts our office and has an impact on the sheriff's office.
And will that take affect 2021 as well as 2022 budgets as far as revenue?
So it's a one-time infusion, and I believe, I can't confirm this, but I believe the award's been granted. I don't know if that means the money's flowed, but the way they looked at it, it was for the initial implementation. And we just had to substantiate as a county that those expenditures were made, which of course they were. As you know, and I've talked about, we shifted a lot of our internal resources. The county helped us and has helped us with resources and all that. It goes towards that. So it's not something, unlike some of our grants where we have to show monthly activities, things of that nature. This was a fairly basic process, and the awards already occurred. So it goes into the general fund for the counties.
So in other words, the expenses have already been incurred to the full amount of the grant.
That's the way it's addressed. They were incurred before anyone knew, I think, that the grant was even going to occur. So it wasn't one of those things where we'd applied for the grant, done all these things. We had done all these things to respond to the discovery laws, and then thankfully this grant came out.
Could you just, if you would, confirm with the treasurer's office how much they're going to book into this year or prior years, and what, if anything, they want to book into subsequent years? I just like to know how it's going to break down.
Yeah, and I don't know how. I know how the grant was recorded, in which it gave a date range for the money. So I don't know if it just goes backwards and pays the past. But I know that it's odd because when the grant became eligible, it was like weeks before the time period was concluded. I don't know, but they said don't call it a retroactive grant, so I don't.
It's just that in the context of doing the 2020 budget, if there is anything that we're going to book into next year, it'd be good to include that in the budget.
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk to Rob and see if he can help me with that. I'm getting a shaking head over there. So that's a good piece of news. Now, we have three budgets: 1165, which is the main DA budget; 1168, the crime victim assistant; and 4220, narcotics control. What we've tried to do where possible is keep these flat, or if there's room for reduction, we have. Starting with the DA 1165, we've actually come in slightly lower than what we did last year as far as our proposal. There was a couple of slight increases. Postage, where we see we're going to be short this year, so we're looking to increase that by $600 for next year. Data processing and internet fees, it looks like we're going to need $2,200 instead of $2,000 to meet that based on our projections, so that's a $200 increase. Our decrease, our legal transcripts and fees encompasses a number of items. We're going to try a $5,000 decrease there. One of the things, COVID has had an impact, and it's made projecting things difficult. As an agreement we made with the state, we no longer have been presenting cases on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're only doing Friday grand jury. And that was initially because of COVID protocols. They didn't want to have to gather two different groups together in small spaces. And so we're doing one, and I think that's had an impact on that expense. It looks like we'll be continuing that into next year. We're still unable to use our grand jury room for grand jury because of Office of Court Administration rules related to COVID. The other area is expert witnesses comes out of that. Our last trial, we didn't have any expert witnesses expense. Our next trial, we know that we will. That's scheduled to be in October. But because of COVID, the trials have been reduced. And there are certain limitations within the courtroom of how many cases can be heard at a time. Only one jury trial, and of course we have civil juries as well. So there's an alternating aspect to that. So it's allowed our expenses to be low. I will say it's a bit of a guess. I know I've got a murder trial in January with expert witness expenses coming up. You don't know what those expenses are up front because many of them charge for time on the stand, time preparing, those kinds of things, travel time, whatnot. So, but I still feel that we can do that $5,000 reduction there and be okay. So that's in your legal transcript fees. The other item that we asked for is 120 salaries overtime to put in 2,000 into there. If we were granted that, that would put our total $2,200 less than the 2021 adopted. So we'd be at 103,300 versus 105,500 from last year. The reason for that is there are occasions, and we try to limit them. On this side, we have, our attorneys. So for example, we had a double fatal that happened on a Friday night of a long weekend, 3-day weekend. So obviously we had to work, but I don't have an overtime line right now. With these new discovery laws, part of the requirement is that we produce certain things within 48 hours of presenting a case to grand jury. So we had to build those files. Because attorneys are not eligible for overtime, what we did is we just had myself and other attorneys working on that. But I'll be honest, we're not necessarily as skilled in the file building process because that's not what our daily duties are. So it's time consuming and it does take you away from the actual lawyering work that we want to do.
So Jason,
Yes.
that would then affect your legal clerks and all of them, or several in particular that would be helping with overtime?
It would, we checked with HR. The only people that are not eligible in my department are those that are attorneys. So anyone else would be eligible if they worked overtime. It's not that I'm not encouraging overtime. I'm not seeking it. I'm just trying to be realistic with what we face. As you know, we work with these police agencies that are 365, 24/7, and occasionally things arise. So I'm just trying to be proactive in that area, keep it small. And if we don't use it or need it, that's great. There are times when there's certain pressures and I'd like someone to stay late, help me get certain things completed. It's not simply cases like that. It can be appeals. It could be a number of things. But I did want it to be clear, because we have attorneys, we're able to kind of muddle through on some of that. And they're not an overtime position. So it's a non-issue with them. So that is that portion. As far as handling the positions, a number of the people in the office, I'm asking for some adjustments to positions. There's 2 attorneys. One is a grade 3, and you'll see in the paperwork I'm seeking to have him raised to a grade 4. The reason is because of the work that he's done, which is grade 4 work. He's done a felony jury trial to successful completion. He's done a large portion of our grand jury work. He's a real up-and-comer as far as his abilities. And as a grade 3, I can tell you that he would be highly desirable to other counties, and I feel like he should be highly desirable to ours, and he's highly desirable to me. So I'm seeking to have that position go from a 3 to a 4 to reflect what he's already been doing, which is, our most difficult work are felony trials and our grand jury work.
Jason, do you
Yes.
have a matrix for these different grades so that if you do felonies, then you're eligible for a grade 4, et cetera?
There is a county grid. I think different people look at it differently. I know that, so for example, the public defender's office is on that grid. The DSS attorneys are as well. So for me, in my department, it might be different than what other departments look at. Because felony trials are kind of that's our goal, is to get people to be at that ability. And felony appellate work. He is there and he's doing that. So I look at the different grades. We have entry-level people. They're generally completely inexperienced, oftentimes right out of law school. And they're in that training phase, learning, getting them to do the basics, traffic matters, low-level violations, sometimes working up to a misdemeanor. And then the next grade are grade 3s. Those are doing a mixture of misdemeanor and some felony work. Right now, I only have one of those. I'm in here. You'll see I'm seeking to have another person classified from that entry level to a grade 3. He's been helping us with some appellate work. He's been helping us with some Sex Offender Registration Act. And he's really become a real value to the office because he's beyond that entry level person. And he's someone that can really be an asset to us. So you'll see that in there. And then the other piece is the legal clerks. As you know, unfortunately, we've had a lot of turnover this year. You've seen me up here on notice of intent to fill repeatedly. Those people have stayed in government, thankfully, and many in other DA's offices or other forms of government. And the overarching issue I've had is just finances. They're able to get more elsewhere. We try to have a really good work environment, but I'm finding that finances seem to rule the day. And even in my interview process, people I interview say, what's the room for growth inside the office? Right now on the staff side, we have very little. And I'm trying to address what we've got and what I'm seeing. So for example, this latest intent to fill that I provided to you today, that person I think is able to get other employment in the DA's office doing similar work with a very substantial increase. And I before that ever happened, I had been speaking to our budget team and to this committee about our need to have some of those positions reclassified, in my view. The discovery work is tedious, it's important, it is, there's time commitments to it, and it takes real ability as well. Everything you're talking about is electronic, and it's figuring out and getting things done correctly so that we can ultimately certify and turn over to defense, including, Marcy's department. I know I've been up here and I spoke largely about that. So we're trying to build into the office and recognize sort of the demands of those positions that didn't even really exist before. And so what you'll see is the county has now created a legal clerk 1, 2, and 3. Our hope is to have 2 legal clerk 3s who are going to be those sort of higher level people with great experience that can help manage, and then some level 2s who will be doing primarily discovery. And then we continue to have a couple who continue to do the regular day-to-day work of the office. You'll see that contained below inside of your packet. And I think it's probably wise for me to stop before I go on to the next one. I just wanted to indicate the other thing we're looking for, as you know, is cost of living for the non-bargaining. And I included the cap arraignment piece. I think that's been static for probably 4 years, maybe more. And I'm just looking for that to see a cost of living increase. And I have spoken to the public defender outside of here. Her department and our department essentially are doing the same thing. They're going to all the arraignments, morning and night and weekends and holidays. And I think in fairness, it should be equal because it's basically equal work in my view. And I think she agrees, but I'm not sure. So in case there's some difference, I just want to address that here. And that's the gist of what I've got going on in that 1165.
Okay. Questions? Supervisor Stroud?
Yeah, thank you. Jason, this is just the draft budget.
Correct.
So some of the changes, for example, adding $2,000 for overtime,
Yes.
and that 2,000 is not in the total yet. You have to wait for our approval.
Correct. We can't change that. So if you look, you'll see that's handwritten. And then it was not handwritten below because I missed that. So I hand wrote on my own 103,300. If you look at that totals line,
Yeah.
it says 101,300. That's if the 2,000 were included, it would be 103,300.
Yeah, and then over on the 100s, the overall picture would change from 1,238,827 plus 2,000. But, and that leads me to my next question. Your request to move your 4th assistant to a 3rd assistant.
It's not it's changing his grade, how he's graded. Yeah, from a 4, and it just coincidentally, he's currently a 3. I'm looking to have him move to a 4.
And that's around 10,000.
Yes, 9. I think it's 9 and change.
Okay, and then the shift to the clerks. Have those numbers been included in here, or you're waiting for our approval?
It's all waiting your approval, but the numbers are included, but they can't be put inside of the totals. So if you're asking, are they included in this paperwork? Not in the numbers, right? Because I don't have the ability to do that.
So I just need to happen.
Ryan?
Yeah, Supervisor, I always call it a current law budget. So whatever populates in the department request field for personnel requests, it's if we don't have any other choice because it's a matter of the union contract, that'll be in there that way. But for the non-union positions, they typically are status quo to the current year because those non-union positions are where the board exercises discretion. So those changes will always show up in the tentative budget column or the column where the board makes adjustments.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the salaries, and I'm picturing myself getting out of law school with a student loan. I don't think they could make the student loan payment for the salaries.
It's a challenge, and I think where the challenge that I really face is when people start to get some experience. They're in demand, and they know it. We all know there's something called see-through New York, and so it's very easy for a young employee to just look around and see and look. And I don't think those are always deadly accurate, but they do look. I hear it. I'm aware of it, and my goal, particularly I'm very happy with the people I have. I hate to say it this way. If we lose people, I'd like to lose them not for financial reasons, because I think we could compete otherwise with what we offer as a department, what this county offers. And yes, there are some increases that would occur if this were to happen. I think they're meritorious, and I think they make sense based on even seeing and communicating with another DA's office who recently was more than pleased to, or I think about 7,000 more, take one of our staff people.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Thank you, Chairman. One great thing, and Jason, I just want to make sure it's still applicable, and I'm sure Marcy and Bob and then everyone else in a criminal justice role here at the county recognizes that while we may not have stellar salaries, meaning bigger counties, private firms, many other opportunities in criminal justice, those students coming out of law school or even with their bachelor's degree or associates, should they work in public service, there is a public service deferment and loan cancellation program. And so that's one of those things that hopefully, Ryan, we are putting out with our HR notices when we go to fill these positions. Because if you work in public service for so many years, the government will forgive your loan balance. That's been in place for decades and has been enhanced over the last couple of years, which is certainly a plus.
Oh, it's a huge plus. So loan forgiveness after 10 years, if you make all your loan payments, then you can get loan forgiveness. For many of our attorneys, of course, they're aware. So when they go to another DA's office, that while it's a terrific incentive, and I raise it in every single, when I interview people, I talk to them about it. But for example, if someone went from Marcy's office to our office, they would still be eligible. Someone went, as they have, from our office to other DA's offices or certain other government employment, they can get it. I think it really helps, though, against private. The cases that I'm talking about have gone from public to public, but that eligibility is not applied to private. So say someone was courted by a private firm, they're not going to be able to offer that eligibility.
Any other questions on the 1165 budget, which as it's written now is about 11% increase over 2021 of 170,000. With the $2,000 request be 172,939. That doesn't account for part of that 323,000 that just came through your door as well.
Well, it came to the county, did not come to us directly. So that's right. And the discovery has certainly changed the whole dynamic of the office and what it takes to make it work. And it costs money, to be honest with you. We have two others. One is the crime victim assistance. That's A1168. This one, I know everyone's heard me discuss before.
So this one is about towards the back of your package here.
This one is not 100%, but as close to it as we can, grant funded by the Office of Victim Services. We've over time been able to very much simplify that budget. And the part that is not covered, in the past, there's been a matching requirement. Matching has been able to take place through internships, through the space that the county dedicates to that. That matching has stopped since COVID and does not appear to be an issue in 2022. But I think we could do it even if it were. So the cost is a 5% of the director's salary and fringe, which I think I estimated to be around $4,000. So this entire line, what it does, it provides our victim services. We have the victim advocate program, as I call it, probably incorrectly at this point. And once we go and pay salaries and fringe and all those things, we're left with a certain amount of money, which can be spread between supplies, postage, phones, those 400 lines. This year, I did include or request to put some of that into an overtime line, which we do not have. And you'll see that when you look at the grand total on the bottom, it looks like we're not using the full amount because the way this one goes in, that $2,001 just sits in the bottom. So it's handwritten at the top. This is a similar situation. We don't, attorneys can kind of and need to be able to do it all. And that's what's expected of them. And so certainly we have plenty of victim interaction. However, we've got two really special people who are doing this work. It's difficult work. And occasionally things happen where we're looking to have people stay late. For example, at the care center, if a child interview is going past 5, that would be an example. This last couple of weekends, we've had some fatalities, and that puts some demands on the office and sometimes a need to have people working off hours, I should say. The reason we put that in, certainly, and we do, the attorneys will cover whatever can't be covered by both our staff and by our crime victims. But that's the one difference, I would say, is that we have not had that in the past. Because this is grant funded and the way we're able to handle these lines, we felt that we could put that in there if needed. And that's that one.
Any questions on 1168, Crimes Victims Assistance? DA.
The last one is the A4220 Narcotics Control. That is essentially one investigator. It's split by 3 retired individuals who now work part-time. 2 are 2 days on, 1 is 1 day on. This is really essentially unchanged. The only difference that I could see was we were able to do a slight decrease on a phone line. So when you look at the contractual expenses of the 400s, we dropped it from 4,548 to 4,185. Some of that, again, is predictive. We've got an older car that they operate. If with COVID's operations down, and so expenses down, and that may continue. I know the future's uncertain with relates to that. But that's essentially unchanged, other than that slight decrease. Now, with all of these, of course, and we see this as cost of living increases can be either it's through the new union contract or the increase in cost of living that we're requesting for the non-union, non-bargaining.
Any questions? At this point, since this is the first of the budget meetings again this year, we do not, do we have to vote on this to approve to move forward, or this is just the presentation of the budget to this committee and then it goes on? Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one brief comment, and I'll say this really for all of the meetings going forward this morning. It's been my experience in my career that when we're looking to cut, reduce costs, initially that looks good, very pretty to the taxpayers, but it also has an impact on staffing, on burnout, on morale, on in some cases achieving maximum productivity if you're understaffed. So those are all things that I always weigh into my decisions. At the end of the ball game, are the numbers still going to be the same as they were at the beginning? So I commend you for submitting a preliminary good budget for us to entertain. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think as far as productivity, I can tell you, I feel like I've spent more time filling out notices of intent to fill, coming up, making adjustments, then putting out offer or positions, doing interviews. It's really been quite a lot of time this year. And of course, then the big picture is now you're starting with someone typically who's brand new. And now I've got other people who aren't doing what they're doing because they're training. I realize that's all part of it, but this has been kind of an unusual year where we've seen just an awful lot of that. And when there's sort of been one overarching thing that's going on, which I've discussed here, I'm trying to address that and make you all aware of it, and hope that we can get these people kind of consistent with what we're seeing around. I be honest with you, when you do something a long time, you can lose touch a little. I've done this a really long time, and I started to lose touch with what's going on elsewhere. You know, you just focus inside your own county and in your own department. And I didn't realize how much movement was going on, how much opportunity was in existence. I just didn't realize that. And now I do. Anything else?
Nothing else? Jason? Well,
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for your presentation of the budget and for taking care of request number 2 for the legal code.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll, and I'll, is there any, it's privilege of the floor, any comments or anything out there in cyberland? Hearing none? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is probation. Thank you, Paula. Dr. Usi, you have the floor.
Good morning. Our budgets are broken down into 3 budgets, and I'll go through them one by one. The thing I like to talk about when we talk about budgets and probation, most of our money spent on staff. We don't have a lot of equipment. We don't have a lot of things we deal with. It's basically people. So with respect to the budgets, the majority of what we have is in the first one, 3140, which is the probation budget. And it's pretty consistent from year to year. This year, I will point out a few things that are different. And mainly they're different because of the grants we've taken in. And in the company pages at the end of the first budget, I've broken down the 3 grants that we currently have going: Raise the Age, STSJP, and Y Reconnects. And with them, what we're doing is contracting for services with those grants. So when you look at them, you'll see the contract line has gone up, but that's a result of the different contracts and different service providers we're bringing in to accomplish these grants. There's revenue that supports it. And a couple other things we've done. The supplies in 3140 has gone up a little bit by 6,000. That has to do with interactive journaling we do for Raise the Age. That's 6,000. If we purchase 6,000, it's covered by Raise the Age funding. And in the miscellaneous, you'll see a large figure of 10,881, I believe. And that has to do with incentives, transportation, and different supplies for the grants we operate. Gift cards, gas cards, a host of things we do to reward people for participation and, quite frankly, to help them get here. Transportation is a big issue in our area. So when you look at that, those are also supported by grant funding. And again, I provided a sheet at the end of the first budget that outlines what we have coming in for those grants and what we project that we will spend with respect to them. Things could change with different contract providers, different service providers as we get into it, but the overall figures will not change. So when you look at that, 3140 has the bulk of what we do. And if there's any questions with respect to that, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Questions on 3140? Which, by my calculations, is 1/2% increase over the previous year, 2021. Pretty close.
I'm not that good with math, but I'll take your word.
Yeah.
One of the other things I think important, and it's important to mention, District Attorney Carousel didn't mention this, but with respect to monitoring ignition interlocks, our department and his department has shared that responsibility since the law went into effect in 2010. He monitors the CDs, we monitor the probation people. We have far less than he has. There's more CDs with ignition interlock than there are probationers. Through the years, Jason has made the request that I take that over because he has one investigator that's all that investigator does for the day that he comes in. And this year, I think that's something we can accommodate. And to do that, what we'd like to do is add a stipend, $3,000 stipend to an individual's salary to accommodate that. There's probably about 90 cases a year for conditional discharges that come in. There is some work involved with it. As I said before, that takes up one investigator's time, but I think we can accommodate that and have an individual do it for an extra $3,000. There is money that supports it. I think last year our grant from the state for ignition interlock between both departments was $8,000. Obviously, if we take that over, we would take the full funding amount and use some of that to accommodate the individual that we would want to monitor those CD interlocks on top of her responsibility. So that's not a big thing, but it's something new that we will look to take on. And I think that's something we can certainly do. We have experience doing it, and it's just, like I said, additional task and monitoring.
Would that be one individual or?
That would be one individual.
Questions? Supervisor Stroud.
Robert, would that be overtime for them?
No, that would not be overtime. That would just be an additional $3,000 salary to take on that responsibility.
So as an added
Correct. Yes. And the only other thing I think to keep in mind as we go through the next month is Community Action does our community service program. They've done it for many years, and this year the RFP is up. Last year we sent it out, and Community Action came back. I believe the figure was 70,000. Previous year it was 60. Due to the financial uncertainty of what we were going to expect with the county, we asked them to do it for 60,000. They agreed. So therefore, we had to send the request out again. So that was sent out on September 12th. It's probably due back in the middle of October, certainly before the budget season would be done. And at that time, we will be able to see who is provided a request and what the figures are. And as soon as I get them, I will transmit them to the committee, and that's something we can have a conversation with. I think last year, Community Action was the only one that responded, so we'll see if we have more come in this year. So I'm hopeful, but we'll see. So that's something to keep in mind, and something that we will have to make a decision on as we move forward.
Surprise. Probation pretrial.
Probation pretrial, the last two budgets are relatively simple because they're just people. Pretrial is just the salary of an individual. So if that budget went up, it's due to the union contract. And the last one is day reporting. Again, that encompasses basically the salary of an individual and $1,000 for supplies for drug testing. That it's been consistent through the years. Obviously, drug testing is an important part of what we do. We try to do it judiciously, just to not waste money, but in a smart manner, I hope. And that's it.
Any questions for Bob? And no referral or pending items.
Oh, sir.
Good. Looks good, Director Rusi.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll let you go. All right, back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll bring up Public Defender Flora. Marcy, you have the floor.
Move this down because I'm short and you can't see me. There we go. Better? I know. Tammy has trained me well. The only issue I have today for you is our budget. We're asking for the same amount or a little less than we did in the past. 57% of my budget now comes from ILS, which is just amazing. So I'm not asking for more money. However, next year, what we're going to be doing, obviously with the consent of everyone and the treasurer's office especially, is to move the ILS funding into a separate budget. As I've been here, it's been interesting to hear that the DA has several different budget sections. And so does probation. We didn't have that. Everything is all in one. And it makes it difficult for you all to figure out what's going on. And so, therefore, we have attached at the end, paperwork about how the ILS budget is and where money goes to. And so therefore, next year, we're going to do a separate ILS budget and a regular PD budget that the county pays for. So unless you have specific questions, I don't really have anything new to tell you.
There. And the 2022 budgets will be inclusive of your additions to the offices
Correct,
that we have
Right,
been working on.
under Harrell Herring, that's the 5-year grant. And so therefore, each year we have to add more personnel and more things to our budget in order to keep the funding. So next for year 4 budget and year 5 budget, I'm adding more people because it's all funded by them. And the reason it is added is to keep the caseloads down. They want a standard of excellence that you can have by only handling a certain number of cases per year. We are not within that right now, and that's why I have to add more people, because we are over the amount of cases each person handles in the office. And so therefore, to get it within the state mandated limits, that's why I have to add more people. So you're going to see more people coming into my office, funded all by ILS.
But with all of that, if we look between the 2021, 2022 budget, you're $7,000 less on the Warren County share.
Correct. The other thing that I did last month that you may not remember, but you voted for, which I appreciate, is allowing me to request funding for a consultation with ILS to get federal funding for family court representation. So I am trying to decrease even the amount of money that I require from the county by getting federal funds. And because you voted that I could request that consultation, I forwarded on Friday to Administrator Moore a letter to send to ILS to request that consultation so I can get things going, because I do want to do everything I can to reduce the county's share of funding for my office.
Thank you. Any questions for Public Defender Flores? Hearing none. Marcy, we'll
Thank you.
let you get back.
Thank you, and I appreciate everybody's support of my office and our budget. I just wanted to thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for all your work on it. Aaron, thank you for all your work on that. Appreciate it. Next up is assigned counsel. Assigned counsel, Fountain is not available today for us, but the budget is before us here. Ryan, is there anything you want to present on this?
Really, the assigned counsel's office is using the same grants as the public defender's office. Not exactly the same, but much of the same funding. And really what I would look to when you look at this request is to compare the 2021 adopted tax levy impact to the 22 adopted tax levy impact. You do that by subtracting on the front page the $1,090,834, subtract out the revenues, and the same operation for 2022. So we're actually in a pretty good position there.
Well, I get about $88,000 difference between 22 over 21, and which is about a 9.7% increase.
That's right.
Any questions from the committee on this? Any privilege of the floor? Any public comment? Okay. And for signed counsel, there is no other referral pendings today. So we're good. If there's no other further business to come before the committee at this time, I request a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor Diamond on second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.